evening from Swansea, wrestling fans. I'm your host, Ben Allison, and you are listening to Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast, your one-stop shop for pro wrestling insight, news, and reviews on a daily basis. Today is Mailbag Monday, where we answer the questions that you guys have sent in to us via our Instagram stories. And yeah, we're going to be answering all of those. So, of course, because we got a lot of questions, we need a great panel. So, introducing first the head of reviewing Kurt Wrestling Republic, Coby Galenzoski. How are you, Coby?
I'm doing pretty good. I got I'm on my last day of my little stretch that I always do. I typically do the Friday to Monday route, and on Monday, of course, Mailbag Monday. We got some good questions, enjoyable questions. I get to bury something, so my shovel is shined. At the end of the day, let's enjoy ourselves.
Absolutely. And we always love when we can complain about something. But also joining us, we have another reviewer, and that is David Sheldon. How are you, David?
Hello, everybody. I'm very excited to be here today. I've had a wonderful day catching up on a wonderful professional wrestling weekend. Some really, really terrific matches this weekend that I'd love to talk about another time. But really, really good. Really excited to be here. Some fantastic questions this week. I'm really, really excited to get into them. So we have the Coby ready to shine his shovel. I am the positive beacon, which is funnily enough because I'm probably going to complain in almost every question today. So for now, I'm positive. We'll keep it there. Let's get at it.
Let's get right into things, and let's kick things off with my top 5 wrestlers of the week. If you didn't watch last week's episode, every Monday I now reveal my top 5 wrestlers of the week. So without further ado, let's go. Here are my top 5 wrestlers of the week. In at number 5, we have Jay White and Juice Robinson. And I don't usually put losers on this list, but they look so good in defeat that, their 5-star classic against FTR, they deserved to be in it. Absolutely, they won the first fall as well after all. In at number 4, we have Trinity. She walked out of WWE and walked into Impact Wrestling, and now she has proved that it was worth it as she won Knockouts Gold at Slammiversary. In at number 3, we have Ricky Starks, who became only the 3rd person to beat CM Punk in AEW and did so in a great, great match in the Owen Hart Cup. Then at number 2, we have FTR. And FTR, in my opinion, are the best tag team in the world right now, and they proved why in their match against Bullet Club Gold. Then at number 1, we got Katsuhiko Nakajima, and his match against Kento Miyahara at Noah One Night Dream was an instant classic. A perfect example when, two guys who legitimately don't like each other have a really stiff match and they settled their differences inside the ring. It was a perfect bout for me, and I absolutely loved the match from start to finish. But yeah, it was a really, really great week for professional wrestling, and that was a really, really tough list to put together. So I'm sure some people in the comments won't be happy with some of the picks, but I did the best I can. And yeah, it was just a stacked week from, top to bottom. But even though from, this week was a stacked week, especially Saturday, this year in professional wrestling, there have been a few shows which, haven't been that great. And that takes us to our first question here today for Mailbag Monday, which was submitted by Jose99. And he is asking us, what is the worst show of 2023 so far? David, I'll take it to you first. What is your worst show of 2023?
This is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be until I sat down to actually think of my answer. I thought this will be easy. There's always one real stinker of a show. And then I couldn't think of one. So kind of looking at the pay-per-view landscape of the year, it's a toss-up between two, and neither are particularly bad, terrible shows. It's between Double or Nothing and the Royal Rumble for me. I'm going to say the Royal Rumble purely because there's stuff in the Royal Rumble that I think is significantly worse than anything that's in Double or Nothing. Because you've got Alexa Bliss versus Bianca Belair, which is really naff. You've got Bray Wyatt versus LA Knight, which is the worst match of the year so far. The Rumbles are fine. They're fine matches. Nothing spectacular. Reigns versus Owens is a good match. But of course, it's hard to not put this. It's hard to say that this is the worst show of the year because it has the best angle of the year in Sami finally turning on Roman. Double or Nothing had a more consistent card with only really Jericho versus Cole being an outlyingly negative match. They were all good to very good matches. The Pillars match was amazing. So I'm going to say the Rumble because I think, like I said, Double or Nothing may not have had the high of the Sami turn, but I think overall the match quality was higher than the Rumble, and the Rumble had the pitch black match, which I hate.
Yeah, and I mean, we have complained on this show about the pitch black match quite a lot. Of course, they tried something new, but it didn't work. And I don't think it was probably worth it in the end, even though they were paid a lot of money for the match because
So
of the
much money.
sponsorship.
So much money.
But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the product needs to be good too. And I'm all for sponsorships being in wrestling, right? It means more money and, more money to the wrestlers, which I think is always great. But there's ways to do it. I don't mind them, having the replay sponsored or even, having, and this final decision comes to you, by blah, 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 similar to what UFC do. And I'm absolutely certain when Endeavor take over WWE, that is the way in which things will go. And I've got no issue with that. But what I do have an issue with is the pitch black match. Like you said, it was a disaster. It just didn't work. You also touched upon Double or Nothing. And yeah, it is hard to, compare the two shows because Double or Nothing, I'm going to be honest about it. I didn't like it as much as you did. I thought the last two matches were very, very good. But the rest of the card I actually thought was disappointing. And I was actually angry about quite a lot of it throughout the night, especially Jade Cargill losing the title the way she did. I personally did not like that. But then, the show was rubbish. And then you had those two fantastic matches to end it. And it was kind of a similar thing with the Royal Rumble, where the show wasn't great. You had quite a few things on it which were bad. And then you had one of the best angles of the year, like you said. And that's a common theme here. It's a very difficult question, for us to answer because there's been some real stinkers throughout the year. But there's always been pretty much on all of these shows, at least something, which is good. But Coby, what about you? What is your least favorite show of the year?
So I mean, this could actually be recency bias. This could be something that we just saw, and it's just like, okay, this is just bad. At the end of the day, after we watched on Saturday, like we said, it was a very eventful night of professional wrestling. Slammiversary, Triple Mania, the Collision, phenomenal tag match. One of the things we watched as a group, the few people from Wrestling Republic that hung out, we went to Triple Mania after Impact Wrestling. And if this is something that buries your style, this is something that buries your style. Not only does a trios match have to take three run-ins to actually end the match, we have they bill him as a battle rapper that unmasks one of the guys in one of the matches. QT Marshall versus Pentagon Jr. in an ambulance match, which I'll give it to him. It was a good enough match, but there was a big spot that ended it, and QT Marshall got the win. I don't know why he needed the win. We had the rivalries tag match, which I'm now kind of understanding what the purpose of it was. But at the end of the day, we had Psycho Clown and Sam Adonis versus LA Park and Roosh, where LA Park and Roosh were brawling with each other, and Psycho Clown and Sam Adonis were brawling with each other. It took at least almost 15 minutes to start action amongst like a team versus team action. And then they had the nerve to do a double finish to just say, well, both matches will happen or whatever. It'll be a 4-way at the next Triple Mania between all of the guys. I don't get it. It makes no sense to me. It was bloody. I'll give them that. But the only kind of upside I can say was Vikingo and Kenny Omega was on the card. And he was like, okay, well, this was what it was supposed to be. It was a solid match. It was enjoyable. But the rest of it was just like, well, why is this in this position? And none of it was really good or anything special. I don't know. It's got to be the one thing I say is the worst pay-per-view of the year. It must be recency bias, but I don't think it's can compete with any of the other shows that did have more than one good quality.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, that is very fair enough. I mean, I'm going to be honest, I still haven't even seen the show yet. So I personally can't say that that is my least favorite of the year. But we got a comment here from Soul who is saying, congratulations on 500 subscribers, guys. Well deserved. Thank you so much, Soul. And yeah, we have just hit, just now, 500 subscribers. So that is awesome. And thank you to everybody who has subscribed. But yeah, let's now talk about my least favorite show of the year. And I'm going to kind of break the rules here because I think how a lot of people interpreted this question is, like a pay-per-view or something, along those lines, a proper event. Well, I'm just going to go for a weekly show and I'm going to say the Raw after WrestleMania. There's been a few, rubbish Raw after Manias in recent years, but this year's just absolutely sucked. It was the worst I've ever seen. It was just a bad show, right? It was a bad episode of Raw. Not a normal episode of Raw, a bad episode of Raw. And it's meant to be one of the best Raws of the year. There was not really any surprises. I mean, of course, we had, the Cody Rhodes beatdown on Cody Rhodes, but that was really, the only good thing about the night. There was no, bangers of matches or anything. I mean, we had Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus the Street Profits, but even that was it wasn't as good as those, those four could actually put on if given more time. We had Austin Theory versus Rey Mysterio, which was just meh. We had Omos squash Elias. We had Bobby Lashley squash Mustafa Ali. And then the main event, technically, because the scheduled main event got cancelled because Lesnar just brutally killed Cody Rhodes for 15 minutes, was Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez against Damage Control. And even that wasn't really good. That match, I'm going to be honest here, kind of sucked. It was just altogether one of the worst Raws I've actually seen in quite a few years. And it was the worst Raw after WrestleMania in which I've ever seen. And it really disappointed me too, because of course, all of us went to that show. We were all, we were very excited for it. We all had different theories and all of that. And then, of course, as well, how can I forget it? The Seth promo. Seth came out for a promo. He had his big entrance and all of that. And then he just went back again. It was just a complete and utter mess. It was poorly written. It was just truly a disgrace of an episode. I really, really do think that everybody who went to that episode of Raw should have been refunded. That's how bad of an episode of Raw that I thought it was. And it's meant to be one of the best of the year. It was very, very frustrating to me at the time. And of course, I was riding off that high of WrestleMania. So I enjoyed being there. I enjoyed all of it. But in hindsight, thinking back to that show and rewatching it since, it was awful. It was an insult to everybody who went there. It was an insult to everybody who, just were watching it on TV. It was dreadful. But now let's move on before I continue my rant on that. Let's move on and let's answer a question by @NeoMartin_97 on Instagram, who is asking, where is JD McDonough? A very, very interesting question. Of course, they were teasing the potential feud or partnership, who knows, between him and his mentor, his trainer, Finn Balor, pretty much a month ago now on Raw. And ever since then, we've seen absolutely nothing from him. Oh, gosh. It's a similar situation as Cameron Grimes. And yes, I know Cameron Grimes will be on SmackDown next week, but still, how on earth you called up these two guys who have so much potential and you've done next to nothing with them? I will never understand. They both deserve a lot better. And I've been a fan of Jordan Devlin, now known as JD McDonough, for years now. And I really did not think when he got called up, he'd be in this bad of a place. Of course, we know Triple H is the head booker now. And of course, Vince McMahon's back with the company, and there's, people are speculating about McMahon's involvement in it. But I really did not think that Triple H, as head of creative, would ever let, talents be called up without a plan. And it seems like this has happened in every sense of that. And it really does get me down. Coby, what do you think? Where do you think JD McDonough is? And do you think we're kind of being a bit too harsh on Triple H for this?
The only thing I got written down on my paper, because I normally do notes, is your guess is as good as mine at this point. I agree with everything that Ben said. Is JD McDonough is a hell of a talent. We saw this. One of the best matches of last year was him versus Ilya versus Braun Breaker at Halloween Havoc. He's one of those talents that I do think he's very, very versatile. He is very athletic, but can also work that technical. I'm going to work on a limb and target a limb like that, or or he works a lot, a fast-paced match. Like there's a lot of versatility within him, within JD as a performer. I do believe, as of right now, I think he's a better wrestler than Finn Balor. So, because Finn Balor has kind of gotten soft, if you want to say it, Finn Balor hasn't blown people away. But at the end of the day, like I don't know. I think this is a place where yes, he kind of had a weird thing with Ziggler that never had a payoff, which makes no sense because you give them time and they deliver a match, and Ziggler makes you care or makes you hate about JD, one of the two. And then the other thing is, yeah, they were teasing him, Finn talking to JD because it's like, oh, they're on the same roster, and but then they were teasing it. But I think this is something where I think we're in the position where Vince McMahon has overall control of what happens. Triple H is the head of creative, but I think Vince McMahon has that final say. And I think this is where Triple H had a plan, and Vince is probably guiding him in a different direction. That's my belief. I think there's a number of things that have that effect, but at the end of the day, I don't know. I wish he wasn't in this position. And we are rightfully being harsh around it, being able to say that they called him up with a plan that hasn't really happened or is being done. Whether or not that's a higher power sticking his fingers into the dirt, like he originally said, I don't know. But you can't say much more. JD's in a position where he shouldn't be because he's such a hell of a talent, and this is what I said. If you don't give if you don't give FTR to Collision and Bulk of Gold to Collision, they're in a limbo on Dynamite. Shouldn't be this way. Where JD would have been in a better position if he stayed in NXT. I don't think that should have been the way to go.
Yeah. No, I mean that's a very fair point. And I mean they have time on Raw, in fairness to Dynamite. They cram so much in that it is kind of like, well, where can they find time with some stuff? In defense to them, I don't really think there's any defense on Raw. I think they could easily fit in some stuff with JD McDonough. We have a comment here from Numero One Superfly, who is asking us, should Via stop teasing that he's coming to Raw, as he's already showed up, and he should instead start wrestling. Well, I mean, in this year at the minute with Jinder Mahal, I think they're doing great stuff. I know me and Drizzy have praised it on the Raw reviews quite a few weeks in a row now. I think they just need to push Industria, and I think they need to push them to the moon, because especially with Jinder Mahal as their manager, it's great. It works phenomenal. And Jinder Mahal, the way that he's cutting these promos, it's scary and it's good, and I like them. I like them a lot. But now let's see, what they do with them, and if they can buck them correctly. But talking about things getting bucked, let's talk about the booking of the New Japan Pro Wrestling G1 Climax, as of course it started this past Saturday And there's been 2 days so far, and I've thoroughly enjoyed both days. Yesterday on the show, I praised both nights, and I praised the 20-minute format they're doing this year. But let's actually specifically talk AEW talent in the G1. This year, it's just Eddie Kingston, and Eddie Kingston had a great match yesterday against Shingo. But this question from @SchoolofWrestling on Instagram is, should Tony Khan let more AEW wrestlers in the G1 climax? And there's two sides to this argument, right? There's the one side which says, well, if they want to do it, if a wrestler wants to do this and that's their dream, let them do it. And the other argument is, well, you risk them getting hurt. In fact, you don't even risk them getting hurt. It's a likelihood they'll get at least somewhat injured, or at least somewhat banged up, wrestling that many matches in a short period of time, which is why I think Tony Khan's reluctant to let more than perhaps like one go per tournament. But David, I'll pass it to you first. What do you think Tony Khan should do?
But the first thing I want to say is Eddie Kingston versus Shingo Takagi was so much fun. Sorry, that's my little geek out moment. Please, can I have the whole tournament be Eddie Kingston just hitting people over and over and over again? As for the actual answer to the question, I think sometimes I do wonder sometimes with these kind of questions, we look very much at the AEW side of things. We look very much at, because that's the stuff we follow. Should Tony Khan, I'll start there. Should Tony Khan put more people in? Again, exactly the reasons you said. They do risk getting injured, but on the other hand, it's good exposure for them to a different audience. Eddie has always wanted to do this. Really happy he's got the chance to. From a New Japan perspective, because it's their tournament.
Yes, true.
They've got to focus on their own talent before they focus on. It's the exact same criticism that AEW have got when they bring Vikingo over, and now they bring Ibushi over, and they bring, which I think they're silly criticisms, but they're still worth discussing. New Japan have got to get their own guys on, maybe over kind of it being a World Cup type deal, and. While Eddie Kingston is terrific for the tournament, I don't think filling the G1 climax full of AEW wrestlers is good for New Japan. I think what they've done this year, which is to have Kaito Kiyomiya from Pro Wrestling Noah and Eddie Kingston from AEW, is perfect because it puts focus on their own talent, and you get those little extra people in every year who just throw that little bit of extra spice in there. Same as when Jon Moxley did it. That little bit of extra spice that you don't expect. Now, I'd love to see people like Bryan Danielson get a crack at the G1 if he's able to do it. I'd love to see, Kenny get another run, get all these different people. Pac, I'd love to see in the G1 as well. But I think one or two maximum per tournament suits both sides. It suits the AEW side, which is you don't risk sending half your roster over there and them all coming back with injuries. And from the New Japan side, you get that little flavor of something different, while at the same time keeping the focus of the tournament on the company who's is hosting it. Because at the end of the day, it's a New Japan tournament with New Japan storylines. And I think your primary focus should be New Japan with extra people coming in as exciting supplements.
That's honestly, that is a great perspective. And it's a great, way of looking at it, of course. Well, when I did that introduction, then I didn't even talk about, it from New Japan's perspective. I guess the argument there would be, we know a lot of New Japan's, revenue, especially on their streaming service. It actually comes from outside of Japan, it's crazy. Of course, New Japan's actual main source of revenue is actually ticket sales, which is, of course, solely pretty much from Japan. But if we're talking about, subscriptions on New Japan World, the argument, I guess, is, well, perhaps if you had a one AEW guy in each block, if it's, 4 blocks of 8, well, then if you had one AEW guy in each block, perhaps that would maybe make more people sign up and watch it. Do you think that would be the case, David?
I think, I mean, the thing is, we've got enough people who have mainstream, like Will Ospreay, like Zack Sabre Jr., like those guys who are Western wrestlers who get that mainstream exposure elsewhere. So you can certainly make that argument, but I think 2 would be a nice number for me personally. One in the A and B block, one in the C and D block, and just add that little bit of maybe add somebody in from somewhere else. I don't know, maybe add an Impact guy in. And just kind of because New Japan work with Impact with the multiverse stuff,
they
so
do,
that you can add in, throw in a Josh Alexander or because he's just come back now, or a Mike Bailey or somebody like that, just to so that it's not just because AEW is not the only market out there. Maybe the biggest that are working with New Japan in America, but they're not the only game in town. But it's certainly a very valid way to look at it.
Yeah. I mean, again, from a business perspective, from a fan's perspective, honestly, you just mentioned Josh Alexander, and I got tingles all over my body. That would just be absolutely amazing. But yeah, more people know a low mid card guy probably in AEW than a top guy in Impact. As unfortunate as that is to say, but let's talk about Impact for a second because. Oh, Matt Williams has commented, what Leo Rush did to Chris Sabin was the meanest thing I've seen since my ex-wife left me. Matt, is your gimmick just talking about your ex-wife leaving you? I presume it's not true. I hope it's not true. And we've got another comment from him now, and he's saying, I've been signed up to New Japan World since 2015, and I still can't figure out how to unsubscribe.
Just enjoy it. Just use the subscription. It's not that much money. Just enjoy the good wrestling. There's plenty of good stuff on. It goes back years to New Japan.
It does. To be honest with you, especially with G1 now, it isn't the time to cancel. It is very fun, but I'm going to be honest, I unsubscribed for a little while. I don't even remember why. I think it was literally 2 months in 2016 or 2017. And I had to watch a YouTube tutorial to figure out how to unsubscribe. But I think they actually have improved the website since then. In fact, I know they have improved it since then.
They have.
So I think it's a lot easier. But back in the day, there wasn't even a translate button. You'd have to use like a Google Translate plugin to translate it. And it was very difficult to unsubscribe. And then I'm going to be honest, I think they deliberately made it slightly hard to unsubscribe as well. But it's a much better site nowadays. And yeah, there's no point canceling it during the G1. That's my perspective on things. But Coby, what about you? Do you think Tony Khan should let a few more guys go from AEW to New Japan for the G1?
The arguments have already been mentioned. Like I don't know how to top talking about it from the New Japan standpoint. The thing I say is like, well, think about Tony Khan's perspective from a business standpoint. A lot of these wrestlers, they still are independent contractors, whether you like it or not. They are your investments. If you say, hey, if they approach you and have interest from New Japan and doing a tour like the G1, like the Best of the Super Juniors, like last year because they had Wheeler Yuta in that. If they approach you with it, it should be in consideration, and it should be something like, oh, Tony Khan shouldn't just put his foot down, but Tony Khan shouldn't be gung-ho about, oh, I'm going to send 20 people or 5 people or a large amount of surplus for New Japan to use simply because it's a grueling schedule, and that's the reputation the G1 has. The G1 is the most grueling tournament a wrestler can be in. In general, and to be gung ho about sending talent that could potentially get injured, that's not the position you should be in. I agree. I agree. There's a happy medium where it's like, okay, if New Japan's inquiring about, say, Pac, and you contact Pac and say, oh, this is being talked with from New Japan sources. What is your opinion on it? It should be that medium. It's like, okay, does the wrestler want it? Does New Japan want it? Yeah, you can be lenient on it, but you shouldn't be like, oh, I'm going to send New Japan 8 talent for the G1 just because I have the wealth of talent. It's like, well, no, because then how many come back injured? How many come back banged up? Because it's a grueling schedule, and it's like, well, those are your investments. Unless you're going to extend the time on contracts, if someone breaks an arm or breaks a shoulder or tears an ACL or anything like that, there's a position where a lot of your money might be in a bad place. I don't know. Remember, talent are investments, and that's the biggest thing we talk about in general. WWE talent are their investments. They want you to be making money for them, so they're not just paying you money. Same thing for AEW, whether you like it or not, they should be making money with their investments, with their talent. At the end of the day, I mean, it's another one of the scenarios. I really like what David said. Like New Japan has to focus on their talent, on their storylines, on that's the thing. They don't need to be like, oh, and there's going to be politics. That's
true.
the biggest thing is Tony Khan's going to send, if he sends Pac or if he sends Kenny Omega, New Japan has to work around Tony Khan, saying, okay, well, saying who would Tony let Kenny Omega take the loss with? And I mean, that's the biggest thing. There's a lot of issues that come with this. I like that happy medium and that small amount where it's like it's just a little bit of taste. Eddie Kingston is in such a limbo. It was odd that he was involved in a program before this because he was in a high profile feud with, or not feud, but he was in a high profile feud where it's like, okay, well now he's not even here for blood and guts. And then they continued his stuff with Claudia, and he's not even there for Ring of Honor. I mean, I digress. There's a lot of nitpicking we can say, but I do like that happy medium.
Yeah,
That happy medium, that small amount of people that make the trip.
Yeah, no, that is a great point, Coby. And you looked at that from a financial perspective as well, and that is absolutely true. You don't want to risk your talent getting hurt when you're the one paying for them. But now let's move on to the next question, which is from @jacob.vl on Instagram, who is asking, will Saudi Arabia be entering wrestling soon? And that's a very interesting question. Well, my prediction is that Saudi Arabia will be launching their own wrestling promotion in or by 2028. I mean, we've seen what's happened in golf and now football, and I think professional wrestling could well be next. The WWE shows have, increased the demand for wrestling in Saudi Arabia, and they proved it's there, laying the perfect groundwork for a potential promotion. And, it's unlikely all these shows would, just be in Saudi Arabia anyway if they launched their own promotion, as it would likely be worldwide, just like WWE is, basically, but they just have several shows a year in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And yes, it'll be controversial and all of that. Of course it will be. It's been the same in football. It was the same in golf. But at the end of the day, it'll bring a lot more money to pro wrestling and a lot more money to wrestlers, which I do think could well be, a good thing. And let me just be clear about this. If they do enter professional wrestling, they will be there to compete with WWE and AEW. They will be there to try and become the top promotion in the business. And they're going to put a lot, and I mean a lot of money to try and do that. And I think they might. They've done it in golf. There's no reason why they won't in professional wrestling as well. David, I'll pass it to you. What do you think about this?
Right, this is a very difficult question to answer with quite an easy answer. Will they get involved in professional wrestling? Quite probably yes. I said my initial thing would have been, well, WWE's contract with Saudi Arabia will probably bring enough money to that part of the world. I said the same thing with the Saudi takeovers in football, and then they've just exploded into that market. This transfer window. This is obviously British football, soccer now, and they kind of completely raided the English Premier League for top talents. Here's my stance on Saudi Arabian professional wrestling. Will it happen? Yes. Will they be there to compete? Yes. I don't quite agree with the argument that it'll bring a lot of money to professional wrestling. I think it'll bring a lot of money to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Because I don't think I think if Saudi Arabia open their own wrestling promotion, I don't think that's going to be some upstart company. I think that's going to be a regime funded or a government funded, I should say, that kind of entity, that kind of an empire and they will outbid WWE, AEW, Impact. They'll outbid all of them. So they'll like they've done in the English Premier League. They'll have all that money to play with. The Saudi shows in are so controversial from as they currently are. But at the end of the day, do I want to see it? No. Will it happen? Yes. Will big money wrestlers go to Saudi Arabia? Yes, they will. Not everybody will, but with the political issues, but people will. And if it happens, I'll be fascinated to see how it plays out. I don't think it's going to happen yet. I think it may happen once WWE's contracts with Saudi kind of sort of start to supersede a little bit, and there could be a bit of a political, sort of and a business war there for those rights. But if Saudi Arabia decide they want to, they will put everything they have behind it, and it could be a very interesting time for professional wrestling in terms of business, politics, quality of products, everything. But it remains to be seen. But yes, I think they will.
Yeah. And I mean, the way that I look at it, right, is I don't think that a promotion, if Saudi Arabia do enter the professional wrestling business, I don't think that would kill WWE. I don't think it would kill AEW. I don't think it would even kill Impact or anything like that. I mean, again, just like when any big company starts, the indies will probably get hurt because certain talents might be raided, to start and develop your own talents a little bit.
Saudi won't go for the indies. No chance. They won't go near them. They'll go. Who's my top stars? Who's my biggest? They wanted to bring Yokozuna in, and he's dead.
That's true. But look at what they're doing in football. They are what people aren't seeing is they're getting all the top guys, but they're also getting an absolute ton. I've had more of the guys from academies and all that in the UK and all of that too.
That's fair.
And that's what obviously I say not as many people are talking about, obviously, because they're academy players, but they're also doing that. So they're trying to secure the future, but of course also get the big names to, bring eyes to the product, so to speak. And I don't think it would kill WWE or anything like that, but I think it would be, another place where as a wrestler you could earn a lot of money. I mean, let's say if you were released from WWE now and you were mid-carder in WWE, you might be on $500K per year. You might get released earning $500K per year, and then you might go there and earn $1.5 million a year, tax-free. So that's the thing about it. It would bring a lot more money to professional wrestling and to wrestlers themselves. There's always going to be debates about it, of course, and that is, they should be had. But at the same time, a lot of wrestlers are underpaid, and I feel strongly about that. And this is a way to perhaps get more money, because even if they go after the top stars, where WWE will then have to, pay their mid-card stars more to get them to stay. So it's a similar thing to what happened at the start with, AEW. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. That kind of slowed everything down and meant there was releases and all of that. But now let's quickly talk about AEW. And, AEW signed a lot of talent, and they brought in a lot of talent. But who is the wrestler that AEW has dropped the ball with the most since signing? And this is a question from Melissa Robinson. Coby, I'll go to you first. Who do you think it is?
I think there's one guy. Well, not even one guy. There's a pair of guys that I gotta bring up that at the time, right when AEW started, they were one of the best tag teams, one of the hottest. I don't want to say free agents, but they were one of the best independent tag teams on the planet. It was obviously WWE had all their teams, and I think they could have went. I think they had interest to go to NXT, but at the end of the day, they came in with such. I don't want to say mystique, but they came in with such interest because they debuted at All Out 2019, attacking the Young Bucks. And then they aligned with Chris Jericho to create the Inner Circle. We're sitting here saying Proud and Powerful was one of the best tag teams 4 years ago, and now where are they? They are both one was injured for a while, which, yes, injuries happen. But at the end of the day, the friendship, if we take what is being said as name value as the truth, their friendship is ruined. And at the end of the day, they're a team that had so much potential to be a top tag team, to be one of the best tag teams in the world. And now it's like Proud and Power, the former LAX or EYFBO. Now we're proud and powerful, and now they're nowhere to be seen in the
Yeah.
wrestling business. I hate that because I was such fans. One of my best tag team matches from 2019 was their match with CCK for Progress. At the end of the day, there's so much that they had, and such. It is the biggest ball they've dropped because they had so much talent, and now they're not even a tag team. And I hate to say that because I really enjoyed them and loved them as a tag team.
Yeah, no, that is a great choice. And like you said, Conan has recently said that the friendship between the two is ruined. And we hope that can get fixed or something, because like you said, they're a great team. But what about you, David? Who do you think is the wrestler who AEW have dropped the ball with the most?
I it would be easy to say 75% of their women's division and go home for tea and cake, but I mean, I'll quickly touch on what I've just said, and then there's one more that I'd like to reference very quickly. But on the women's front, like so much of their early Japanese talent, Riho, Hikaru Shida, Sakazaki, Emi Sakura, just unbelievable talents. And once Riho kind of started really, really hot and then kind of dissipated out, Shida's still having great matches occasionally, as is Riho, as is all of them. But then, like, they've just kind of fallen into obscurity once they've got their big names in now. And only having kind of one women's match per show is not helping that. I'm hoping Collision, as we go along, will give it more of a chance for that. On the men's front, Hook. Hook was the biggest thing in wrestling for a little bit. You know, it was one of my favorite acts. A really, really just cool face, which like, and somebody who people started liking ironically and then grew into love. And then kind of grew to really love. And then he just did nothing for ages and ages and ages and ages. And you can feel even in the Jungle Boy feud he's having now, that the shine is just not with him anymore. And I'm hoping that this feud can be the start of a kind of an upward momentum for Hook, because I was a massive fan of Hookhausen when they did that for a brief time, but it was all very low card stuff. And they did exactly the same thing with Action Andretti, which is start them really hot and then just forget about them really quickly. I'm really hoping that doesn't happen with Nick Wayne as well. So I would say on the women's front, if I had to pick one name, Riho. On the men's front, Hook.
That is, those are some great choices there, and I do agree completely. I mean, I agree with both of, the choices that you guys have brought to the table there. For me, personally, I was actually originally going to say Shawn Spears, because, I mean, he had a great match this week in Battle of the Belt, and he's always somebody who I thought has been, underrated, but I'm actually going to go with Lance Archer, because he's somebody who had so much momentum behind him in AEW. He looked and felt like a star, and not many people, knew him beforehand. I mean, I was watching him, in New Japan, and he was doing a great job in his singles run there. And then AEW managed to get him. And I don't know how New Japan felt, because I think they had big plans for him. But he went to AEW, where he had so much momentum, and he was just looking great. They paired him then with Jake Roberts, Jake the Snake. I mean, why wasn't this guy, in big world title feuds, a long period of time? He was, around that scene at the start of the pandemic and just before, but they dropped the ball with him very, very quickly. And we kind of just haven't seen him since. Of course, he's just returned now. But where's he been for, the last year and all of that? He's somebody who should have been a star there. And he was kind of put to the side when guys were brought in who were released from WWE. And I do think if so many people weren't signed after those, pandemic releases from WWE, I think Lance Archer would be in a better place. So I do feel like he was kind of a consequence of all those great signings that AEW, brought in. And I mean, one argument of that is that, well, it brings more experienced wrestlers are coming in who more people know. But the other, side of it is Lance Archer could have been a big star for AEW, and they could have developed him into somebody really, really special for them. But guys, that brings us to the end of the show. It's been a really, really fun one. Thank you to everybody, who submitted these questions, because, yeah, it's been a banger of a show today. We'll be back tomorrow, an hour later. We'll be here at 9 p.m. UK time, 4 p.m. Eastern, and 1 p.m. Pacific for our Raw review. But thank you to Coby and David for joining me here today. If you've enjoyed this episode, guys, please like and subscribe over on YouTube. Thank you for 500 subscribers. And then if you're watching on Spotify, please give us a 5-star review. It helps tons. Thank you, guys, and we'll see you tomorrow. Enjoy your evening.